Hello. Just a couple quick notes before we get started. Can you hear me all right? Welcome to Design and Innovation. As part of DC Design Week, my name's Anthony Deal. I'm the chapter president of AIGA DC. I want to say thanks first to Sapient for generously providing the space for this event. I want to say thank you to Zach Goodwin, our moderator, who I'll be handing the mic off to in a moment. Zach is a creative director at iStrategyLabs. He is an accomplished designer and innovator in his own right, and will be moderating the event, like I said. Thank you to our panel, who will be introduced in a moment. Thank you also to our DC Design Week sponsors, including Digital Ink, who did the posters, and the other printed material, except for the lenticulars, which were by Dimension Promotions. Thank you to Huge, Rock Creek, Strategic Marketing, RP3 Agency, and thank you to the AIGA DC sustaining partners, who are Corcoran College of Art and Design, Mac Lab, Getz Printing, and Art Institute of Washington. Last item, and you see it here on the slides, AIGA 50, our big 2-year biennial design competition, is upon us, and the deadline is going to be November 8th of this year with no extensions. So check it out at 50. The web address is 50.aigadc.org. You can find all the details there. The submission panel is not open quite yet. It will be soon. You'll be getting an email about it. It should be tomorrow, so you can click through that. I believe that's everything. And I'm going to hand it off to Zach Goodwin. Thanks.
Yeah, let's do it. Hey, everybody.
I feel like there should be a chair.
So we're actually going to start. I'm going to hand this off, and everyone is going to give you a quick rundown of who they are and what they do.
My name is Richard Bloom. I'm an associate creative director at Huge in DC. I am actually the creative lead of this office. We're an office of about 38 now. I was actually employee number 4 in January, so we grew quite quickly. Hiring most of the talent, working on all projects, overseeing for quality, and making sure that we're doing the best work possible. I actually moved pretty new to DC. I lived in New York for about a decade plus and worked at a few agencies, one being LBI in New York, where luckily a lot of my friends and colleagues had moved to Huge. So when I had actually come to DC, Huge opened an office, and it was just a great opportunity to help start and build the office here.
Mine is not so illustrious. I'm actually the head grunt for LUHF and LUMM LLC Design in Washington, D.C. It's a small little practice. And actually, LUHF and LUMM means let us have fun and let us make money. So we are actually, and that's how we think of it. We want to have fun first, and the money will come. And that seems to be working out pretty good. I'm actually an architectural graduate. I practice architecture, do a lot of corporate interiors work. Some graphics. We try not to get in that arena because it's really not our specialty. But we love working with the design professionals who are doing branding and corporate ID, and we love to do work with magazines, et cetera, but we're more on the interior side. But design is that common thread that we all hang on to. And actually, I'm sure we'll talk about it with Zach, and there'll be a lot of questions, but I just want to let you know that I am the head grunt of LUHF and LUMM LLC.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jordan Goldstein. I'm the managing director and principal of Gensler, Washington, D.C. So I have a large crew. I have 275 staff in 7 different design studios. Everything from buildings to interiors to brand strategy, graphic design, and product design. So for those that don't know Gensler, Gensler is an international architecture, design, and planning and strategy firm. We have 46 offices around the world and about 4,000 people. So we're designing everything from the Shanghai Tower, which some of you may have seen, which is going to be completed next year. It's the second tallest building in the world, to wine labels and task lamps. So the super tall to the super small. I'm a big believer in interdisciplinary practice, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about today. So I also I teach at the University of Pennsylvania, a course on product design amongst Wharton architecture and engineering up there. And then here, really focus on weaving all disciplines into our practice. So everything that's a tangent to design, trying to get that under one roof. That includes a strong brand strategy, graphic design team, all the way through commercial office buildings to everything from aviation and transportation to planning and urban design as well. Glad to be here.
All right, how to follow up on that. I'm Kate Davis. I work here at Sapient GS, and our practice here is primarily governmentally focused, but we also do a lot of NGO work. And most of what we focus on is how to solve the client's problems, taking usually incredible amounts of data, squishing them into incredibly useful sites, hopefully, or even more complex and trying, working in the mobile space. So since I've been here, I've headed up a couple of mobile projects and also worked with the team on the American College of Cardiology. So you can kind of see how we have a nice broad range. I'd say our biggest challenge is getting all the cats to play well in the sandbox. So we have everybody from incredibly gifted developers who understand databases in ways I will never understand databases, to astonishingly very good designers, and trying to get them all to work together to come to a consensus around a common purpose for our clients is really how I see my role here. And then trying to convince the client on top of that they really have made a wise choice.
Excellent. We can actually just keep that mic there, because I have one that is conveniently on my chest here. So I'm going to say I'm Zach Goodwin, as they introduced me. I'm creative director at iStrategyLabs. iStrategyLabs is a collection of 36 designers and developers in DuPont Circle. We're about 5 years old, and I think we aim to be like a Gensler with 2,000 less employees. We do a lot, but maybe with a little less. So I feel like as a moderator, it is my responsibility to come up with a big intro paragraph, and then I'm going to hand it off here. So allow me to read from my paper here. Innovation comes from the Latin to make new. Innovation infers a kind of radical newness, something that is wholly reconsidered. It suggests revolution, transformation, and upheaval. And over the last 30 years, it has been used so ubiquitously as to become almost meaningless. So, to start us off, can we go across the panel and share a definitional example of innovation, but you can't reference an Apple product or the internet? This is gonna...
That's messed up.
As you see fit, and I think the important thing here is that notion of transformation, and that maybe this steps outside of the arena of design. But let's kick us off as a way of kind of framing our concept of innovation.
Innovation outside of the internet. Interesting. Just in general. I'm trying to think of just something that's completely blown my mind. I mean, something recently that really actually excited me, talking about architecture. There was I just read an article about a building that they were able to make it appear as if it has disappeared. They were able to put LEDs all over this building. Do you know the name of that one? So I can. No. You know the project, yeah. So just something like that actually it shocked me. It was something that's so rare to be shocked, to read these blogs and go and dig and see something that you're like, how the hell did they do that? So I think it's a lot of, maybe not the internet, but using technology and blending it with all of these different sectors is something that I think is really exciting. So something like that, definitely, to me, just being shocked by that means that it's innovative to me. So it was an upheaval.
All right.
Social
A transformation.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And also, if you don't have one, we can just keep passing.
Yeah.
Innovation is a revolt. It's a complete change of thought. It's saying that we are going to be sustainable, and we're going to take materials and we're going to do crazy things with them. We're going to make them work in ways that have never been thought of before, whether that's furniture or buildings or transportation, cars in particular. One thing that we're looking at the use of materials inside and outside, how we're using rubber. We've really gotten very innovative and imaginative and starting to think about our world design world in particular on taking something that we would have never thought 20 years ago. I am certainly old enough to have lived before there was an internet. So there are lots of things that have been innovative as I've been growing up, but the one thing that comes to mind right now is just the whole sustainability, the leaps and bounds that we're taking in growth of, and use of materials from household through business, through buildings, through everything. So that's where innovation is like blowing up.
Revolt, I think, is a really good word. I was going to say that I think it's a challenge to be revolutionary rather than evolutionary. And I'll give you a specific project example, for me, which, really, I think had the innovation charter, which is for Duke University. So in 2009, I was asked by Duke University to form a team to design them a campus in China. So it would be a Duke University campus in China from scratch. So it's to define what does it mean to be a new university in a foreign country, 8,000 miles away. What does it mean to be Duke University there? They had no academic curriculum or program, so we got to help define that. So it was, in a sense, in my mind, it was kind of shake it all up, right? And see what you can throw down there, but then figure out your vocabulary. So how are you going to speak? And you're not going to, my Chinese is rusty, I know 5 words. But how do you figure out a illustrative language that is mixing the best of East and West to tell its story through design?
So I'm going to cheat.
I like cheating.
I'm going to say Twitter. I know it's not technically the internet, but it runs through the internet. I think when I think of technology and how it's impacted the world, I never would have considered Twitter when it first came out. 140 characters, what the hell is that going to do? And suddenly, you let it loose on the world, and what happens? You get the Arab Spring. You get entire sections of the world overthrown by 140 characters at a time. Right? So I know it's cheating, but I'd say that to me, that kind of communication and that kind of innovation has really is what I'm excited for every day. Is being able, I come from art direction. I'm a communicator by trade. So to see somebody take something that seems kind of innocuous and turn it on its ear and flip the world on its head, literally, is fascinating.
So maybe let's try to have kind of like make this a little bit of a conversation. Yeah. But I'm thinking, and I'm gonna like give you a thesis. And my thesis is that America and our current standing kind of fetishizes newness. That there is the constant need, and especially the internet seems to feed this. There's this like insatiable quest for just a new thing. And maybe that's a worldwide phenomenon in this kind of like late capitalist period. With that said, what is the relationship between innovation and newness? Like, where is that dividing line between something that is new for the sake of being new, or new because we enjoy disposable items so that we can constantly replace them? And how do we find that line between new and innovative? Also, I would follow up with, recognize that like innovation as a concept may be kind of half marketing bullshit anyway. So if we presuppose that like most things that claim to be innovative aren't, what are the criteria you use to define innovation?
And I think we need to start that conversation with our culture. Because most of the world is not looking for new and disposable. And I think that that's part of our challenge as designers is to, for lack of a better word, influence the world by our innovation and our revolution to see the world quickly and moving in different light speeds. So it really is not, I just came from Morocco about a week ago, and they're not moving quickly.
Yeah.
So it is wonderful, but they're not moving quickly. And it really was, well, I've traveled a lot. It was still eye-opening again to sort of land in a place where people are living every day. I mean, they're just not pressed about looking at their phone a million times, although everybody had a phone, which I thought was interesting. And you couldn't get fresh water, but you could certainly get Coca-Cola. And you could certainly get a phone. So I thought that was interesting. But I think our prism is how we live. And that's not really the world. And so I think we have to think about it in terms of how we influence the world, what we're exporting, our technology, our brain power, really is, how I see it, is going to be very key to moving the globe where everybody participates at a certain level. So I would like to sort of frame it in that regard, that it's us, and we're a microcosm compared to the globe.
Yeah.
And so what are we doing?
I think that's a great lens to look at it through. Just watching the whole shutdown and the debt ceiling stuff go on, which I'm sure drove all of you nuts, drove me nuts. But I wanted to stick them all on a plane and take them 3,000, 8,000 miles away and have them view the world through the eyes of the folks over there looking at us. And I've traveled a lot over the last several years. And I've been really amazed at kind of the cultural immersion, and then when you start to kind of go through an unlearning process. So I think all of us have been, we've gone to school, we've had a curriculum, we've worked a bit, and you kind of get, you're trained, and how do you go through a process of unlearning? I think whether it's projects or travel or whatever, I think there's this opportunity to go through this unlearning that allows you then to look at the world in a different way. And I think when you do that, it just opens your eyes to a whole different horizon. For me, an eye-opener was I had developed a relationship with a client in Thailand, and we ended up opening an office there. So I went over, and opened an office in Thailand, in Bangkok, and it was like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and you have to forget everything in order to kind of appreciate the culture. Everything about business, I should say, and then from a design perspective, if you really want to design in a different way, it's an opportunity to have to kind of open yourself up enough to let and to be influenced and let what's happening around you there permeate you, so that you can be a different kind of professional.
Well, and I think also to that point, I think I've learned a lot just being here and being able to. So I come from a traditional advertising background. I've done a lot of traditional advertising, and I've sold all kinds of stuff. But coming into a situation where you're doing something that's really out of your comfort zone, you have to kind of put down your own stuff, assume that you're not going to be right, and be open enough to ask the questions to be able to come up with the appropriate solution. So if we were designing, if we were designing the iPhone for India, it would be different. If we were designing, a wine bottle opener for Saudi Arabia, it would be different. And I think that being able to put down both your cultural biases and your professional biases to understand your client's problems is huge. I mean, it took years to get over myself enough to say, all right, I hear you, what can I do to make this problem either go away or get better? I don't know if we answered your question.
No, I don't think there is an answer. I don't think there's an answer to any of these questions. I wonder how you guys deal with needing sometimes to make an innovative solution, and coming from the world of kind of like a design advertising hybrid, making an innovative solution for something that isn't innovative. Right. I find this a lot, where you have a client who comes asking for something, shocking, when they are not shocking, and they're fundamentally unshocking. My dad was a print designer for a million years, and he had a kind of like breakdown. I remember sometime when I was a kid, and they had Quaker Oats as a new client, and in kind of like a candid moment, him sitting there telling me it's like, spending my life redesigning like oatmeal boxes, and it can sometimes be. I think his ultimate solution was that it was good to bring beauty into the world, even if it was empty beauty. Yeah. And maybe that's a good answer. But so how do you deal with that change?
Yeah, I do think that clients, they come to you saying, I want to you to blow this out of the parks and take it to the next level of innovation. And I don't think you can force that. I mean, that is not something you can just pull out of a hat. I think that there is always an opportunity for innovation. I mean, from your definition, taking anything that's best in class and pushing it to the next level and having some sort of upheaval, even if it's a small upheaval, doesn't need to be some mind-blowing iPad, Steve Jobs upheaval. Just little wins are huge for these clients.
I also think designing I have a big voice.
Forget it.
So I'm loud, and I'm used to speaking in this room. So I also think you have to kind of look back at your client and say, okay, I could blow the doors off of this guy, but his head will explode.
Yeah.
And sometimes walking in the room with the appropriate solution is hard enough, and getting it sold to them and getting them to believe you that it's buildable, doable, exciting is enough. So kind of being able to gauge, usually sort of in the initial sets of comps or sets of wireframes, you walk in the room, when you see their eyes start to turn red or their ears start to smoke, you realize you pushed them too far.
Yeah, they have to be ready to go for the ride.
Yeah,
If they're not, if they think they are, and then you start to go down the road and start to blow their minds, right? If you see their reaction, you can say, okay, they're maybe not educated enough about this process to really understand what needs to be done to innovate. So if you're in a place where you feel like they're not understanding your process and you're getting angry with the client, or you're just feeling they're not getting it, then maybe our fault. We need to educate them and explain to them. This is, listen, it can happen. I've been in situations where innovative ideas just come, just freely. You're just in the first shot. It does happen, but it's not going to happen every time. And I think that they understand that we need to fail and go back to the drawing board, and we need the time and the resources to do that. To really innovate, they have to be.
I think the interesting thing for us, we're supposed to use the mic.
No.
We're recording.
Oh.
Thanks, guys.
It's obviously a very confidential discussion.
That's right.
So, for us at Gensler, one of the things we really try to instill in everyone that works with us is that we don't have a set style. It's really about, attuning yourself to the client, understanding their mission, their values, their brand, and through that, figuring out, a design that's responsive to them, and speaks to them and to them only, such that the space or the place or the object is so them that it couldn't be anybody else. But is every project going to be the next Herculean jump forward? Probably not. But how do you look for the kernel in every project that you can kind of pull out and make something different and take it and advance it? So if we're doing a new workplace environment and it may be the third for that particular client, how do you find something new in that? And I think that's what we talk a lot to our staff, to our teams about really kind of peeling the onion, and looking for the individual opportunities for innovation. Certainly there are projects where you can make a giant leap forward like Shanghai Tower, which you're reinventing what it means to be a skyscraper. But when you're doing a chair design, that's going to go out in the market, how do you find the blue ocean that's going to make that solution so unique and differentiated that people look to that and say, it's not another Me Too. It's something that's truly different.
And to that point, for me, and I think for a lot of us, I can speak on this panel, the beauty of design is when you don't even know that it's been so well designed, that you don't even really know. You have to look at it maybe 3 or 4 times and say, well, something little going on there. I see it. But to really, something that is so well designed that it's not obvious, sometimes is the leap. It doesn't have to be so magnanimous. It doesn't have to be so grand. Some of the most successful designers, we just look as designers, we see it and we go, wow, that was pretty. Or wow, they worked that one out. We're problem solvers. With clients, a small hop sometimes is just enough. That's what they're looking for. It takes them to the next level. And when you get to be Gensler, you get to work with clients who really, I think, understand design at a different level. My little firm, we have to educate them about design and why it's important, and that small detail that we work so hard on really is important, and let me tell you why. That is the leap in my firm. That would be nothing. To Gensler, they have, and it's because of the size and because of the experience and the breadth of what you might do in your own practice. So it's not always this big leap. It can be a small hop, or it could be a step in the right direction that just moves the ball forward. And as designers and problem solvers, the best, I know when I'm working on a problem, I go in with that intent only. I'm not even looking for that great detail that's going to make it sing until I solve the problem first. And then we can start to manipulate from that point forward. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I was saying, I think a lot of innovation, people always think right away of tech. You know, tech is where all this innovation is happening, but sometimes it's hidden in these little facets that we do. I mean, we're building, enormous, web redesigns, and I see this innovation in content strategy. A person who, like you said, simplify, take all this, maybe this site that people have been dumping information in for 10 years, and being able to dig through this and find a way to distill it, and actually help them innovate in their space, because they're, it's so easy to connect to and be able to read the content and actually, distill it down and simplify it. I think that's like it's a small win for a lot of people, but that's a massive, I think big innovation in our industry now is just the idea of content strategy. Yeah. But like you said about Twitter before, I think that's another, idea around, like you said, we're always thinking big with innovation, but 140 characters, it actually was just keeping it simple and small, which was, the constraint of it is what made it work. They knew they knew that people were, just wanted nuggets, and I think that, that's really what's the big difference for Twitter.
I have one more thing on that.
Yeah.
So the other thing that we find a lot, because we do a lot of work with government clients, is you walk in the door and you think you're going to do this massive redesign, and what you're really doing is you're looking at their business, and you're looking at the way they do business, you're looking at the way they handle their editorial flow, you're looking at the way they process information, and a lot of times when you're looking at all of that, it's not so much that you're going to come out with a great looking site, but you're changing fundamentally how they work. Yeah. So you're telling them, okay, you write amazing reports, but you cannot possibly publish these PDFs online because nobody's going to read them. But if you take them apart and you put them on the web, this is great information. If you put them in your site in ways that in a completely different way, you now become a publisher. So we have to often look at ourselves and say, okay, the solution here might not be that incredible CMS system that we're going to have all these bells and whistles on. The solution might be teaching them how to work better together. We do a lot of facilitation between clients where, one hand doesn't talk to the other and they don't know where they're putting things, and frankly, what we're teaching them is how to work better together, how to make their work streams function better. And when we walk out of the door, they come back to Sapient a lot of times because we've had those really ugly, frank conversations in a polite way and said to them, look, you guys have to figure this out. And we're here to help you, and we'll walk you through it. So design, I think, is growing in ways that it never was before. When I started out, you were a graphic designer. You did logos, you did copy, you put together ads. You didn't fundamentally change the business.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I was just going to counter something. I actually think that very few clients, actually, big or small, actually understand the design process. And I would say that because the design process is really, in a sense, nuanced and different for just about every client, partner, whatever that we're working with. And I'm sure you guys experience, we have certain ways of working, and that can kind of morph into a design process. But I actually think there's one that always comes to mind to me. I think it's a fantastic example of a great process. How many of you guys have seen the IDEO shopping cart video? Raise your hand if you've seen it. Oh man, okay, can't Google it now. Okay. but your homework tonight. There's a great video, and basically it was done as Nightline, the news show, approached IDEO and said, we want you to redefine what it means to have a shopping cart. What does a shopping cart look like? So what do? They put their team around a table and did this kind of charrette fast, blitzkrieg design process over 7 days. And who's around the table? It's not a bunch of architects or designers or graphic designers. It's a brand strategist, a physicist, a biologist. It's an economist. It's all these different minds, and the solution that they get to by virtue of their collaboration and their whole appreciation of user experience allows them to look at the problem totally different and come up with a really amazing solution, which frankly is an extremely innovative solution.
Yeah.
So it's a really great video. It's 8 minutes. You guys can make it through. It's good. It's easy.
I feel like an interesting bridge off that, it sounds like collaboration can be inherent and fundamental to innovation. I wonder how we feel about the role of the internet in both being the friend of and enemy of innovation. For those of us in the web world who build websites basically for a living, yeah, you got to be on the internet, I've heard. But it feels like there is this great sameness that begins to pervade, especially like high-end web design, where there is this kind of trend chasing that coalesces a kind of global style for like, you have a designed website, and that means you have a fixed navigation at the top, and you have a full bleed, big header image, you have one giant headline, and it feels like the internet is this great proliferator of innovation, and at the same time, it is this great whitewasher.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Well, yeah, obviously being in the industry of the internet, like I said, I can't avoid it. But I do think that there's a valid reason to be inspired and to go online and see what other people are doing and see what's best in class and critique it. And obviously there's always going to be borrowing in this industry. I mean, there's only so many ways to skin a cat sometimes. And I think that there's also best practices. So in a lot of ways you get into the situation where you're like, well, if this is the best practice, why are we changing it? If the navigation should be here, or we know through data that a big header pulls people in for this industry. So I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with it. I think that it's inevitable, and sometimes you need to sort of accept it. But I think there are wins in creating your own style and adding your style to it, at least in sort of the site design world. I think what's also interesting is now there's so much importance in integrating advertising into, you have a lot of these shops that started out, Huge really started out as like a web building company. So when they build sites, they build these really gorgeous, beautiful products. And now it's becoming more, getting more into the advertising world, social. We're doing a lot of, we're basically became the social AOR for Audi, and we're doing, Vine videos, and they're very hands-on, and we're doing like almost little pieces of artwork now. So it's a really exciting time, and now I feel like that's the next step. Is we are obviously seeing that happen. Other brands are doing it, and we're always being influenced, but we need to make it our own. And it's all about, in that space, at least the idea needs to be great, and that's where it's really.
I think you landed in a perfect spot.
Yeah.
I think that the ubiquity is great because it sets standards for how to get, and it gets the basic stuff out of the way, But then it pushes you to a place where you have to push on the idea, and the idea becomes much more important than the framework that it's in. And I think that great ideas will always be great ideas, and they're impossible to come up with. But once you hit that great idea, you and the one that defines the brand, the Coke means, Coke means life, just do it. Once you hit those and you get that brand essence, and you can start telling the story and riff off it in 1,000 different ways, that's where the innovation starts to move.
Yeah, I would add too that as designers, whatever we're designing, whether we're architects, graphic designers, industrial designers, web designers, whatever, we're storytellers. We're out there to try to tell a story, and the canvas of the internet is just another medium to tell a story. In my opinion, and I think it's I remember when I did my undergrad, and it was like there was really no tech. It was all hand tech, and then I went to grad school, and it was tech, and forget the hand tech. And it was like these are all these things. There's all these tools in the toolbox that are there for you to use to tell a story. And I think when we go see, something that's amazing on the internet, or we go see something amazing product, and it kind of speaks to us, it's telling a story, and we're connecting with it. And what I think is great about this is that, there may be a lot of, stuff that's out there on the internet, and we surf through it to the point that we kind of just are, immune to it. There are still things that speak to us and tell a story, and that's an example, I think, of great design, when it's stitching together that good yarn.
Nothing from me.
I wanted to make one more comment. I feel like, I'm always, trying to talk to designers about exactly like falling in love with the story, understanding the holistic side of what we do. I think we get so bogged down, at least I know that I got caught in this trap when I was a young designer, of being into our skills, obsessing over the type and the kerning and the art of it, which is so important. We need to be great at it. Just like architect has to, learn all the skills of the drawing. But it's like, what do you remember, the bigger picture of what you're actually building? I think that, I call it the LUMM mentality. It's like, a lot of times they're not thinking about what content's going to be in there. Are you reading it? Are you really understanding? Is it readable? Are you getting the story? Is it in the right place? And I think that it can be a really dangerous trap to be so in the weeds with, just being like obsessed with just the tactics of design and not think of that larger story.
And part of that comes, part of what we now have to do. I don't even see it as something that we want to do, but we have to collaborate. And we got to collaborate with people that don't understand your discipline. They come from a total psychologist. I mean, they inform us about, from their vantage point, what we're doing. It's been very eye-opening and enlightening to just not only talk with a client, but also talk with the support team that a client may have, and to sort of see how they fill in on our canvas. Because everybody sort of brings their brush and they know how to paint their portion. And somehow that collaboration, I think for all of us as designers, the collaborative process is going to be bigger and better, and we're going to invite a lot of people to the table who will inform us in different ways that we don't know of today. Yep. And we're going to design better. We're going to be better designers, and we're going to think about problems totally different. When the psychologist tells you something, or the accountant, the financial person is saying, no, we need it this way, you then start to learn. Because at one point, designers think they know a lot about design, and they only know design, and that we've got to back away from that. As students, you're taught to grasp all the skills, learn as much as you can, but I'm finding that there's not as much curiosity that I had as a student. I mean, we were, and it's because everything is right with Mr. Google. Nobody reads as many magazines anymore. I love to go to the newsstand and just look at pictures and, that story again that comes up. I'm not finding that as much anymore. And we're going to have to get back to that, because it's the curiosity that fuels innovation. Because you start to think of things differently. And if you're not curious, if you don't want to experiment with that wood sample that you had and said, how can we use that differently, then we're not going to get more innovation throughout our careers.
I'm going to give you one statement, and you are going to give me one sentence, either affirming or denying.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, sorry.
I wasn't there, I promise.
Style is the enemy of innovation.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think style drives innovation, especially a personal style. I think every designer has their favorite tricks that they like to use, but you hope that you can get over them, in the first 5 sketches, and then you can get to the actual answer of the problem. But I think out of, your first 5 sketches are the places where you go to that are comfortable. And then when you start talking to yourself again and you say, okay, I really cannot have another one of these in my portfolio. I really have to have something better here to bring to the client. You can start stepping out and changing your style, expanding your style. Looking around and seeing what's changing, especially in terms of design. I mean, in the last year, you can see what happened with iPhones. You know, I mean, Mr. Ivy took a look at it, and he stepped back and he said, God, this thing is ugly. And, you know, they had invented it. They pushed it to the limit. They had to step back and go, God, this stuff is ugly. I need the next thing. And iOS 7 came out. So, for better or for worse, it's going to drive the conversation for a while.
Can I interrupt to ask, how many people in the audience are familiar with long shadow? Does that mean anything to anybody?
Flat design.
Yeah, okay, so like, there, you know, in this brief like dribblization of the design universe, you know, we had this like, we get these like month hiccups, and maybe this is where I'm going, is that this kind of like trend whoring, or just this constant need to feel like we're right on the cusp. And you know, you checked like the 37 dribble samples that came out today, and we had flat design, but flat design ultimately has some boundaries that are built into it. So like, let's throw a long shadow, and then all of us are doing long shadows, but we're only doing it for like 2 weeks. And then once those 2 weeks are done, we're like hungry for what's the next long shadow.
Oh, yeah. But,
So I
you
wonder-
have to focus on your client. Your client's desires come up way more prevalently than your own stylistic drive. I mean, you may do that, you know, birthday card with the long shadow on
Yeah.
it, but that'll get it out of your system.
Yeah.
Your client is still going to be, you know, in our case, it could be, you know, the United States Census Bureau. I mean, you can do cute for so long with them before they look at you.
It's great. I think that is a good point, that design is a solution, design not as a style. For me, there's something intertwined about the internet trend, design kind of elevating itself into this new profession. Like when I was growing up and my dad was a graphic designer, I could tell all of my friends, no one had ever heard of it. They didn't know what it was. I had to tell them that he made the logos, and no one, you know, and it feels like design has been elevated to this kind of privileged tier, which is great, I think, for us. Probably good for our salaries and good for the world. But I wonder how all of this, like the internet trendiness, the public visibility, how that's all meshing together, and whether that is a challenge to real thoughtful innovation.
I wasn't sure where you were going with the long shadow. I'm still on drop shadow. You know, I was thinking that you know, there's an article that came out in Wall Street Journal. It was like I don't know, several months ago, but it was the rise of D school, the death of B school. Did you guys see this one?
Yeah.
So basically, what it's saying is that design education is the new MBA, and that's the commodity that more and more people want. So, you know, I could hire 5 MBAs, but I want a creative thinker, you know. So, bad for the MBAs, right? But good for all of us, right? So I'm a big believer that design thinking is a liberating curriculum, right? And it enables us to be, you know, problem solvers. And what I love about it is now that the world's gotten so complex, and that the world is flat, and we're able to, you know, you can have a client in, you know, Moscow, and I can have one in, you know, in China, and it's like whatever. We're working without boundaries and across cultures and across languages. But what the world needs is more people that can act as creative partners, you know, that can go upstream and be sitting at the table with your client, you know, making these business decisions that may lead to some design solution, maybe doesn't. But you're there. You're seen as a trusted advisor, and that's gold. I mean, you know, you know, their business will go up and down, but if they see you as a trusted advisor, they will always hang on to you. And that's, as a designer who appreciates design thinking and the value of it, to be that creative part upstream is huge.
It is huge. It actually is huge. So much so that our intellectual capacity is one that, well, a simple analogy. You know, once upon a time, you wanted people to call you and say, "Oh, I need you to work on my design. I hear you got a firm," or, you know, "Can you help us with our design?" Well, now the best question I could ever get is, "I need your help." Doesn't have anything to do with design. That one question. When somebody calls me up and says, "Shauna, I need your help," I have to put them on mute because I'm probably dancing. And I'm like, yes, 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 yes. I have not asked that question about design, and I really worked hard to get to that point because I want to be a trusted partner.
Yep.
And I think that not asking specifically for my talent was an affirmation that I can help you in whatever we're talking about. And it really, I had to think about it because, the first time it happened, I had to hang up the phone and I thought, well, I'll help you with your design. You asked me for something else that I could care less about. And then when I thought about it later, it was like, oh yeah, no, that's the question that's the question I want. I want someone to call me and say, I need your help. And then that opens the door so wide that the partnership, the collaboration, and the trust, because that's what you want. You want to be the trusted partner at the table that brings those creative ideas, that does not think in such a linear fashion. As designers, our box is like this. And it may come back to an end and it may not. So that's what we want to do. That's where innovation starts to happen and collaboration on a large scale starts to happen.
I don't want to kill this thread because it's a great one. I wanted to jump back to your question about style and innovation. I feel like, to me, when the second you said it, my instant reaction was they're two different things. You know what I mean? I 100% agree with you about the dribblization situation. That's a nice little
Dribblization situation.
That's right.
The problem with something like, my issue with dribble, yeah, you guys want to tweet that? My problem with dribble is that you get a lot of these, it's just these little nuggets, right? And it's all about like the serotonin drip. It's how many people liked it, how many people, it's not about what's the big idea around this. I mean, some of them, there are some great like app concepts on there. I'm not going to discredit dribble completely because I obviously go there for inspiration as well. But I think there is a lot of this sort of obsession of fame within the community. I do think that can kill innovation because you're so inwardly obsessed with your own style and your work and the work that you're doing that you're not thinking about the product that you're creating, or you're not thinking about the bigger scene, what design is really about. I mean, it's just not, like you said, it's problem solving, right? It's wanting to be able to help solve business problems. I mean, it's bigger than you. So to me, yes, that does kill innovation. But I think that you can still be innovative and also, have a foot in style and being aware of making things beautiful because you want to do something you love, you want to make something work. So that's what we do.
I also have one more thought. I look at I look at dribble and I see a lot of ideas that I've seen before. You look at a lot of the way people are using type now, your long shadows. I mean, that's what, French poster circa 1880. I mean, there's a lot of design that's always been beautiful, and I think I would urge everybody to, make that thing that you love that has the long shadow, put it in your portfolio, put it in your back pocket for the right client, but, always look at the client problem first. And then, solve that creatively and make it as beautiful as you can. Because there's two different designers. There's the design you do for yourself and the design you do for the world, and you really want to be focused on the design you do for the world.
Do we think that does innovation make us any happier? Or is it possible that we are just churning endlessly through?
Was our life better before the internet? It wasn't worse.
So I love my cell phone. I love my cell phone. My cell phone does things for me that I cannot do on my own. Like remember my mother's birthday, making sure that I remember my doctor's appointment that I made 3 months ago. So I think there's certain innovations that make me a ton happier and a ton more functional. I mean, as I get older, I'm hoping, I keep my memory, but there are going to be things where, that I really think there are going to be places where innovation and technology in particular will make me happier. And I think there are things happening in medicine that are ungodly, unbelievable, like growing new noses. And I think that's going to be really, really interesting. I think for me, innovation makes me happiest when I'm the one out there either pushing my team or pushing myself to think differently every day, because that keeps me young and that keeps me focused outside of myself. And that's why I love design.
Yeah, innovation it is a word used so often now that it's just like, if you can go a day without hearing it, wow. I really feel that in our space, in our world, innovation needs to be a definition that you kind of come to terms with on your own. What does it mean for you, right? And then kind of take it to the next level. What does it mean for your team, and then what does it mean for your client? And the definitions should probably, they're not going to all be overlaid. They're going to be different. I was thinking what you just said, and we challenged, we went outside of our comfort zone last spring. So I taught a class at Studio at the University of Maryland, and it was around design for the aging, and it was really kind of out of a need. And it was my own, understanding that I was at my grandfather's house one day, and he walked into the kitchen and said, "I got to move." And I'm like, "When?" He's like now. And I'm like, "Well, why do you want to leave this house?" And he's like, "Well, I can't live here anymore because it hasn't aged with me." So, okay, well, there's a problem, right? There's a pain point. How do we design for it? And what does it mean to be innovative in this field when innovation is currently looked at as retirement homes? So your option is you stay in your current home, or you go to a retirement home. Yeah. So anyways, we put it to the students, and the students, had this awesome, semester. And one of the things that stuck with me from an innovative standpoint was they proposed design solutions for the house, but they also thought through products, that make the house. And one of the stories that came out of it was that there was a story, some of you probably saw in the news, about a guy that had dementia. And his doorbell rang, and he wasn't expecting any visitors, so he grabbed a shotgun, went to the door, opened the door, and shot his son. And it's because he didn't recognize his son. So the students had unearthed this story, and they said, "Well, we have to try to solve this. It's just terrible." So, can innovation be smart? So they proposed basically a door that actually had smart technology that projected, read from your cell phone or read from whatever device, pulled up your calendar, pulled up the family members, and basically projected all that on the door. So as you walk towards it, you'd say, "Oh, my son's coming over for an appointment," and there's a picture of him. And basically they had went and analyzed that situation and found that if the guy had literally just had a photo by the front door that had that picture of that son, he would have had some cue that would have caused a pause, and the pause would have prevented that accident from happening. So I think there's a thread of innovation in there, and I think the idea is to look at all these problems around us, figure out the pain points, and from the pain points that are there, figure out the innovative opportunities that we can bring to the world.
And there is opportunity in everything. There's opportunity in everything. We sort of discount a lot of stuff and think that we can't improve upon it. I always think, through the word game of innovation, typically you think of improvement. Has that always happened? No. We're moving at lightning speed now. I'm not certain that all of our innovative thinking has made the world better at the speed of what we're doing. Like, it seems to be a disconnect in my mind that we're so forward thinking, but the rest of us are trying to catch up, or there are products that are trying to catch up, or there are cultures that are trying to catch up. So innovation, yes, it's important. It should advance us. I'm not certain it always does.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think, thinking about the catch-up scenario, I do think there's so much energy that goes into just innovating, like new phones that are just coming out every year. I mean, we're throwing out our phones in the garbage every year. I mean, I think that we're all, I'm just as guilty of just wanting to upgrade and obsess over the newest in technology. But I think it is something that needs to happen in business, and it's the American way, right? But I feel like if some of that energy was put into different places, it would there's such an opportunity for innovation to change the world. It's happening all the time. And it doesn't always have to be technological or via the internet. I read some article. I know I mean, I just read an article about somebody who was creating indoor lights using chlorine in the bottles that they were putting, so the sun was reflecting through a combination of chlorine and plastic, and there was something else in that. I don't remember what it was, but basically it illuminated the room. So these people who were spending a lot of the time indoors in the darkness all of a sudden have light, you know, and it's funny to think that, you know, just such a simple idea could change so many lives, and it's not, you know, a new iPhone.
Right.
So.
And I think there are companies that are addressing that too. If you look at like Nokia, their third world phones are very different from their first world phones. And their third world phones are doing things like connecting market women to their banks in a country where it's really hard to get to the bank. You know, or they're helping them transfer money so that they can create business, you know, so that they can go buy the fabric in another city, you know, have it shipped to them and create dresses in their own hometown. So that's the kind of thinking. Or, you know, I've seen other things too where they're developing billboards that are solar, that are also solar charging stations, so you can illuminate your entire village. So I think taking, you know, the 21st century and applying it to the 19th also has really incredible advantages if you learn about it and do it right.
So I liked what you were saying about improvement, correlating innovation with improvement, and we are constantly kind of on this treadmill of making things like a little bit better, and then as a result, casting away the thing that kind of came before them. And I'm wondering, and I'm saying this as a guy who has an iPhone 5S in my pocket, which I discarded when I had the iPhone 5 and got rid of it for the 5S, which is the most useless upgrade of all time, in case you're curious.
But it talks to you.
It talks to me. It's pretty cool, actually. But so I'm wondering, do designers have an ethical obligation to make purposeful improvements? Like, do you feel an obligation to turn down the iterative improvements in favor of something bigger? Like if we're all talking about chlorine lights that feed Nigeria, like, oh, that's awesome, but we're not really doing that. I'm making websites for like Deloitte, so.
I don't know if necessarily if someone, I think that kind of innovation, I would be blown away if someone was sitting around trying to make that. You know, something had happened, he'd spilled two chemicals together and had some into a cup, and it just all of a sudden it glowed, and he said, oh my God. You know, so those things happen, I think, sometimes on the fly, and the right person catches a moment and knows that he has something special, right?
I guess what I'm saying is, do we have an ethical obligation to do something other than make things pretty for money?
How busy are we? How slammed are we? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I look at the Tesla, you know, the Model S. I mean, it's a cool-ass car, right? It's gorgeous, it's a great car, but like, did the world need another car? You know, but what's the technology advancement and what's the innovation? There's a ton, right? And it's like, wow, so they basically turned the industry on its head and came out with this product. And what's their business plan? It's not to kind of keep churning out cars. It's actually to be the next generation technology company. You know, where everyone wants their technology to use for whatever, you know, a vehicle or something else. So I think that's really interesting. So they picked a product that is kind of out there that isn't solving world problems, but in doing so, they may get to something that is really a catalyst for big problem solving.
And they're actually making their money on their technology outside of the car. The car was the glam piece. Right. That was to get the recognition. I'm sure, as well as make money. You're not in business not to make money. You know, the whole purpose of being in business is to stay in business. So, but that was the glam piece. That was interesting, a nice analogy about that. But they just had a big article in the Post, maybe about a couple weeks ago. A lot of their money comes from all the other products, the batteries, everything else that they ship to other car companies and other businesses. And, you know, it was interesting that this nice little package is this beautiful car, but guess what, guys? You know, that's not really, we're happy we have it, but this is where our real core business is. So that was a good a quantum leap into something that was different from their main business.
I think like Elon Musk, right? This guy. I think that's an interesting point because he could have put out, you know, I think the Leaf is perfectly nice looking car, but he knew he had to make it sexy.
Yeah.
You know, and I actually think he is saving the world in a way. I mean, that's a great, beautiful car that got people excited about electric cars, and I think he changed the paradigm shift in the mentality of a lot of car owners about what can be electric and how, you know, powerful it can be. So, but it is interesting to think about how he's not just thinking, okay, cool, I'm going to make the next car. He's thinking about making a train that goes from San Francisco to LA in like 2 hours. So the pneumatic tube with the electric engine. So he's just selling his idea, and I just don't think a lot of people are ready for something like that. And not everyone can be him. Not everyone can be Steve Jobs, right? I mean, there are certain people who are in certain environments and their synapses work in specific ways to be able to be that brilliant. But I do believe that, yes, going back to your question, we do have an obligation, but I don't think we can constantly obsess because we have to wait for the right moment and know when it's the right client, right time, right situation to be able to take that.
How about, and this is hilarious because I'm so not, like, I am a wild capitalist / senseless consumer. But, so like, how many people get Fabs like email in their inbox? So I get Fab every day, and I love the products that come in it. But I do sometimes think to myself, like, do I need this like flawlessly designed bamboo like paper napkin holder? And are we in some, and like it looks awesome in my kitchen. But is it possible that we are like the purveyors of great evil by, I'm serious, by constantly like micro iterating in the name of beauty for things that need essentially no iteration? And maybe if the choice was a Fab offering and the awful Walmart version, maybe that's a good trade. But when it's design feeding like consumption, design feeding like fetishizing beauty, is that become an evil?
I heard something this morning that we were doing a strategy session on kind of the market, where the market's going. We had a bunch of people in the room in different industries, and someone said something interesting, which is the future of retail and the future of the business communities and fulfillment. And I thought that was really interesting. What does that mean? It means like, it's not that, you bought the, whatever it was, the little napkin holder, bird-shaped thing, whatever, then you got a widget. It's the idea of fulfillment, that something was delivered to you, and it struck you when you got it and said, oh, that's interesting, and you got it. So it's like, their analogy was wild. It was like, why did Jeff Bezos buy the Washington Post? Because he recognizes not that, newsprint is a dying thing and I'm going to go throw my money after something that's dying. It's that for years, decades, centuries maybe, newspapers have delivered fulfillment. So it's another way. Amazon was kind of round one. Round two is I'm gonna go tackle fulfillment using this distribution stream. And I can tell you this one story. I was in Chicago this past weekend, and someone told me about this new retailing concept, and I was like, okay, I got to check this thing out. It's called the Trunk Club. You ever heard of the Trunk Club? Yeah. Yeah, right. So, so I'm like, all right, I'll go check it out. So what I found was pretty amazing. So they're redefining what it means to be a bricks and mortar store, and they're redefining what it means to be an online clother. But they're doing both. Usually you get someone trying to do one or the other. But to be able to try to do both, and then they're going in and they're saying, you know what, I can be a retail store in a downtown urban market, and I can be on the 7th floor. So they have their store is literally on the 7th floor, but it's also their distribution center. But for the people in Chicago, it's a physical place, and for the people like me, here in DC, it's a virtual place that I possibly could go visit if I'm ever passing through the neck of the woods. So, that's kind of a fulfillment thing as well, but in doing so, it's redefining a bunch of things that we kind of had associated with conventional store, conventional way of ordering online. So I think we'll see more and more of that.
So the model of fulfillment is one that we are getting like emotional sustenance out of this product, right? And so if we contrast them with our Moroccans, who are getting a need probably met mostly, they're fulfilling a like human requirements by getting their napkin holder or whatever the equivalent is that not like the path to the most like empty, soulless pursuit ever, is that I achieve my fulfillment through the beautiful objects that surround me.
I don't think it's evil or empty. I think it's like it's in our DNA as human beings. I mean, back in in Egyptian times, there was digging clay out of the earth and making pulp, painting and making ceramics. So I think that it's like part of being a human being. We want to create things and own beautiful things, and I don't think there's anything technically wrong with that. I think if you're using products that are terrible for the environment and mining nickel, your iPhone. Sorry. I do have a little. And Apple's trying to fix that. I think now in this day and age, now that we have environmental issues, we do need to be conscious of that. I think if we're buying things without any consciousness about where it's coming from, I think that can. I don't necessarily say people are evil for doing that. They may not just be educated on it, but I do think that that's more of the problem. But some of the stuff on Fab seems like it's,
I think from Fab
pretty
all the time.
environmentally
I don't want to
friendly.
hate on Fab. Love it.
I think it elevates design. I think it pushes it.
Yeah.
I really do. I think, that it just pushes it out there. The more we are consumers, and we think about the world differently. We want the biggest and the best and the brightest and the next coming of whatever it is. That I think will. I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. Let me say that. I think that we've elevated that to such a level. And design it has pushed the envelope of design, because we see things, if it's better design, then we want that. And a lot of bad design has been pushed to the forefront because of our consumerism as well. So, just being mindful of how many phones you have. I mean, it's incredible to me that you can't go anywhere. Somebody has a phone in their hand everywhere. That which to me happened overnight. I mean, it's not been that long that we've had these fancy gadgets that we hold in our hand that I say to my students are like, it's not your breathing apparatus. You can't take it down from your ear. It's very interesting how quickly that market grew. It was one phone. And all of a sudden now there are so many phones. And they're getting bigger, so I don't even know where the tablet starts and the phone begins again, because things are changing so quickly.
Yeah, I do think we may be looking back in a little bit of a dark ages of the obsession with playing with the phone and it's constant. I mean, the whole thing with just texting and driving, everything that's going on now. I think we are going through growing pains of being able to control ourselves with our devices and use them in a way that doesn't take over our lives. I think that there is an addictive quality. I think we've all experienced it. And so in that way, I think that obviously I love Apple. I love my phone. I think Android is doing fantastic work, and I think that it's important that people can get information quickly, and it's a wonderful thing. But I do think that there's a balance that's going to have to be had soon.
Just gonna add one. I think there's this awesome thing with technology when you start looking, beyond our borders, which is the ability for countries and cultures to totally leapfrog, a whole level of development. So you look at the cell phones and the cell phone technology, where countries where everyone in the country may have it, but they skipped over landlines. Yeah. And the technology has allowed them to kind of leapfrog up. And I was thinking of for us, like from a design standpoint, doing that Shanghai Tower project. We hadn't done a super tall tower, so the tower is 121 stories, and it's like the tallest thing we did before that was like 50. So, doing it, and it was tackling that problem the first time, there was all this kind of thinking about, well, why do we just have to extrude a box? What's like the conventional skyscraper? Why can't we try to do something different? Wow, when you actually twist the form, you reduce the wind load on the building and you save 20% in terms of your structural cost. Wow, why not? Why not capture rainwater at the top? Why not do all these different things? And what did we do through that? We leapfrog, our competition in a sense, and said that we're now in the super tall tower market. So I think there's this ability for technology properly harnessed, and as designers to be able to harness it, to actually use that to our betterment in business, and leapfrog whatever it is, our competition, the market, et cetera.
I actually wonder what it's going to do to the third world in a lot of ways. Because if you don't have to buy the ugly cheap plastic shoes, are you gonna? Are you? So if you are cognizant of style, which I think Western style has pretty much permeated the entire world, which was never the case before. You know, everybody knows what an iPhone is, unless they're living in somewhere deep in the jungles of South America. But for the most part, the human desire is to have the shiny, the new, the coolest. And I'm kind of wondering if as designers, if we're responsible enough to grow the best technology, do the best design up front, you know, when the third world picks these things up, they're going to want to pick up the best and the brightest.
I think
If
we are
possible.
paving an economic road for them to join us in, you know, in our current, you know, maybe 50 years. But they're humans too, and they're going to go through this same growing pain and/or endless black hole that like we might find ourselves in.
The only thing is, it's like they're dependent on our technology, our satellites. So there's always a business angle to this. I think most of them want to make money off of it.
So I think were we supposed to end at 8? We're like,
Oh.
so maybe we went a little over. Do we want to end with what do you hope for from innovation in the coming decade? What is your? I've been going dark, so let's go light.
Let's go light. No, I was saying before, I feel like it's already starting, but just for me, it's just that sort of paradigm shift in the age of Aquarius. You know, the consciousness of understanding, like, wow, we have this unbelievable tool. We can finally take some innovation and use it for good. And I feel like there is a shift. At least it seems that way in America. I think there's a big shift at the whole green movement and everything. It's not hippie anymore to care, because I think there's a fear of warming, and there's people who are like, oh shit, this stuff's really happening. Like, we really need to take care of the planet and our people are becoming more empathetic. So that's really, for me, I think just as long as there are enough people that care, and there's enough opportunity for people to make money at jobs doing that kind of innovation, that's something that really excites me.
Following that train of thought, my hope is that we will really start to empower with our intellectual capabilities around the world, with the collaboration of cultures and designers and all kinds of professionals, where we really start to collaborate and make some inroads on some real world fundamental problems that could easily be solved if we just put our time and energy towards it. You can't tell me that if we spend as much time on some of the madness of things that we do now, that if we didn't put that brain power into solving problems of, you know, starvation and medicine and, you know, illness, that we couldn't, in fact, as creatives, and we'll just use that as creatives, to really start to make some inroads and to make some progress towards things that the rest of the world, you know, you'd be surprised that probably about 70% of the world, you know, doesn't have all this technology that we have. When we think of our little microcosm, we think, oh, everybody has it. Well, that's not true. Most of the world is not up to speed on what we're doing at lightning speed. So I think we're on our path. I think we're opening up people's eyes about what we can do and how effective we can be, from a very small, in this room, we've solved a problem, to one that's a global problem, and we are on that path now. And I'm excited to see the leaps and bounds that we make not only as a society, but also as a world, when we're starting to look realistically at the challenges and the solutions, because there is opportunity in everything.
So as designers, as differentiators, as collaborators, as those that are tasked with trying to tell that story and bring a level of beauty into the world that may not have been there before, I think we have this opportunity to pause and promote even greater collaboration. And maybe it's a challenge for each one of us to kind of look at the problem in front of us, look at those around us, and maybe try to bring one additional person or group into the process that wasn't there before, to promote a richer, better solution.
I think they pretty much said it. But no, I do think the challenge is always for us to keep reaching out and hopefully solve things in better, smarter, more beautiful ways. you never know how that's really going to work out in the long run.
Any questions?
Oh yeah, Q&A. Set up some
Awesome.
questions.
It's warming up in here.
First, yeah, we're gonna be here till like 10, 11:30, so get comfortable. Go ahead, throw your hand up. Here we go.
I come from the in-house design world, so it's always very much, it ain't broke, don't fix it. So how do you balance the idea of trying to be innovative, but also keeping that, thought in mind of, don't create something new just to be new?
I would differentiate, and I feel like I went on a weird little rant there, but I would differentiate between the digital and the physical, where I feel like you can argue that in the world of digital iteration is a gift that tends to result in a better, more usable product. And in the world of like physical production and the making of widgets, there is kind of like an inherent waste in this constant iteration. So I feel like you can't change radically enough in your position, and radical honesty is the best way to make your case, or being really forthright. So I don't know, I would draw a hard line between the production of goods for the selling of goods and making small micro improvements versus in the world of CSS and servers where we can do this basically at very minimal cost.
No, I think it's exactly right. I think it's the small wins. It sounds like in your situation it's those small wins, and if you can find those moments, that is innovation, right? We kept talking about we keep thinking innovation is this grand thing. I mean, definitely there are small differences you can make at your job, and if you can, sell something through that you feel like is the right thing to do and it's going to make the product better, then I think that's innovation.
I'm just going to add, I think a good challenge for yourself is, you're in a situation where there's probably some design expected of you, right? So do two designs. Do the one that's expected of you and do something that you feel is pushing the boundaries and bring them out there. And if there's reaction to it and it elevates the whole conversation, great. If not, you got a great portfolio piece, so keep it, right?
No, I agree completely. I'd actually do three. I'd do the one they asked for, do the one you think they're gonna buy, and then do the one that freaks them out completely, because that's the one that'll go in your book.
That's generally how we get our designers, always do three. Don't ever put one out that you don't like, because that's what they'll pick.
Absolutely.
Never show an option of one.
That's right.
I would also argue for when selling to non-designers that empiricism or faux empiricism can be your greatest weapon. I think there's nothing like a completely made up fact or something to push them towards I'm completely serious. That if you need to buttress what you know to be true with something that feels like it is true because of a fact, I think it's very helpful. Also, real facts are great too.
Well, that's what I learned in art school. Anytime there was a critique, I could justify what I put up there and how it goes to the project, how it fits in.
Other questions?
Going along with what you guys were saying, do you have any suggestions on how to convince the client that what they're saying is not right, or giving them suggestions along the right path? Especially government clients, when they have a lot of data, like what case it? Any suggestions?
So we have a pretty serious UX component to any project we build. And generally, we will test it and test it and test it, just to make sure that when we do walk into the room to sell the final ideas, they've been vetted by a separate audience that's not them. Because there is nothing more telling than a complete stranger looking at that and saying, I can't find it, or that's a piece of crap, or why would you do it that way? To really have your client's eyes open up and say, okay, I buy you. You're not jiving me here. This is cool. And I think that any opportunity that you have to vet any kind of creative. I mean, I've done tons of marketing, research. I've done research where we've done polling outside, just to kind of get a sense of, so you take yourself out of the solution. You take your ego, and put it aside and say, I hear you, this is how I'm solving it in a couple of different ways, and this is what your users tell them. They don't always believe them, but at least you can direct them away, usually direct them away from their own internal madness for a minute, so that they can you can find better solutions.
When referring to the empiricism, that's exactly the kind of thing I was referring to. Also the faux empiricism, but really, like, when having, I mean, the giant, like, unsolvable challenge of design is that it is ultimately a subjective reality. There is no truth, there is no right answer. And so when you can have real human beings who agree with your solution, that can be really helpful to try to push a maybe more linear group of people towards your way of thinking.
I think
And
that-
also gets you to the right answer for real, because you're right.
So I think you raise a really interesting, kind of question/problem, which is, what happens when it's not resonating, and I think it's an interesting thing, which is how do we as designers be editors, of our own ideas, and it's whether it's editing on the fly to know whether my story needs to tweak, or being able to kind of go after that meeting or after that session and be able to kind of, reframe the problem or reframe the design solution, and present it in a different light. One thing, I find that we have to kind of challenge a lot of, often with our design teams is like, make sure you really understand with your design, what's the big idea? What's the why? And are you able to communicate the why? Because a lot of times the client, if they may not jiving with them because they don't understand their true why and how that why connects with them.
Lots of questions. Questions, more questions. Ask a lot of questions.
Saw somebody over here. Oh, hey, Warren.
Yes.
Oh, wait, hold on. I was just going to say one more thing. Sorry. In that I think there is, okay, so if we take this reality that design is not, there is no true one right answer, you'll never be able to point to the answer that is unequivocally correct. I think a lot of it comes down to their belief in you as an expert and your position of authority as that designer. And so from that first encounter you have with a client, we have now begun this elaborate discovery kickoff process. Every time we start a client, it starts with 3.5 hours where we are face-to-face with one another, delving into their deepest, darkest problems. And the result of that is often really great information. But the more important result of that is that they inherently trust me and the solutions that I'm offering. And when you think about, like, my sensitivity for design is very high, their sensitivity for design is very low, given that in many cases, they kind of don't know what to think, they just want to respond, or they want to, in that moment where they're not sure whether this is good or bad, they need to trust me and the solution I have provided. And so I really think it comes down to that relationship and to not jeopardize your sense of authority by never sending things that you don't believe in, never sending things late. They're very sensitive to business dynamics and business, sense of professionalism. You're really sensitive to design. So make sure you're hitting their cues when it comes to you're on time, you're delivering on time, all of those things, because it reflects how they interpret your design in a huge way.
One other thought. Don't be afraid to kill your children. Because you may love them, you may think they're brilliant. They're going to Harvard, by God, but really, if they don't solve the problem and they don't resonate, they are the wrong solution. So that was, sage advice I got, a million years ago. But they are only your ideas, and they are flexible and can change.
All right, I'm going to be the jerk here and stop this. But we really do want the conversation to continue. Sapient has graciously provided food and beverages out on the side so that we can keep the conversation going. I know there are more questions, so stick around. We're not letting any of these guys leave quite yet. So give them a round of applause.